Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tearing into the future of construction. 3D printed concrete or 3D CP. I mean, this technology really feels like science fiction finally landing in the real world.
It does.
Think about it. You can just eliminate formwork, you can slash labor costs, and architects can suddenly design these incredible gravity-defying shapes. It promises to change, well, everything.
It absolutely does, but we have to remember the material we're working with here. Concrete. It's the second most consumed material on the planet, right after water.
Right.
And for decades, our entire engineering basis has relied on one core assumption. Whether it's cast or precast, we treat concrete as homogeneous and isotropic.
Meaning its properties are the same no matter which direction you test it in. It's a solid, uniform block.
Exactly. And that assumption is the bedrock of, well, all of our current building standards.
But 3D CP just completely shatters that idea. You're not casting a block, you're building it layer by layer, sequential.
Precisely. You're not creating a continuous mass. You are creating interfaces, these boundaries between the layers. And they are very often planes of weakness.
So that introduces this critical factor.
It's called mechanical anisotropy. And in simple terms, it just means the strength of the structure, its stiffness. It all depends on the direction of the load relative to those print layers.
Okay, so if you push with the layers, you might be fine. But if you try to sort of peel them apart,
you have a completely different and much bigger problem.
Right.
And our current testing methods, the EN12390 or ASTM-C39, crushing cubes and cylinders.
That's the standards.
They're completely inadequate. They assume the material is uniform. They're blind to anisotropy.
So that's the mission for this deep dive then. We're going to look at a study that actually tested full-scale printed columns to, 1, quantify this weakness, and 2, find new ways to actually spot it.
New diagnostic tools for quality control. That's the key.
Let's jump into that experiment. These weren't little lab samples.
No, not at all.
The researchers tested 6 full-scale concrete columns, about a meter tall, 800 millimeters long, all printed vertically, and they even waited 2 years to test them. But the thing that really stood out to me was that they included intentional flaws. I mean, why would you do that? Why go to all the effort of printing a huge column just to sabotage it?
Because that sabotage, as you call it, gives us crucial insight into real-world performance. Look, if this technology is going to be used on a real construction site, you have to know how it handles a small interruption or a slight change in the concrete flow.
So it's about reality, not perfection.
Exactly. So 4 columns were the clean reference ones.
Yeah. But 2
of them, CP1804 and 05, had these built-in defects.
What kind of defects are we talking about?
So CP1804 had a section about the third of its length where the printed filament was just narrower. It simulates a brief interruption in the flow.
Okay.
And CP1805 had a very similar issue, just a reduced filament width on one of his long sides, things that could easily happen on site.
And they put all 6 of these columns into a 3-point bending test, basically pushing down on the middle until they broke. And the results were, well, they were alarming.
They were. The difference wasn't just a number. It was the difference between a gradual, predictable failure and a catastrophic collapse.
Wow.
3 of the columns showed a gradual bending failure. You could see a crack slowly developing at the base. Predictable. But the other 3 failed suddenly. And in a brittle way, the failure was total delamination. The layers just peeled apart.
That's the nightmare scenario for structural engineering. So that variability, the peak load it could take, the stiffness, it was all governed by these tiny little printing defects.
And the quality of that interlayer bond, the quality control issue, is literally printed into the material itself.
Which I guess leads directly to the next phase. You have to quantify it.
You do.
Yeah.
Since the big test proved how unpredictable it could be, the team then extracted smaller fragments from the broken columns. They cut them into standard shapes, like little beams and cubes.
So they could measure specific properties in different directions.
Exactly. Parallel to the print layers and perpendicular to them.
This is where we get the hard numbers on that anisotropy. So which property was the weakest link?
Flexural tensile strength, without a doubt. That's its resistance to being pulled apart while bending.
Okay.
When they tested it parallel to the layers, the mean strength was about 1.96 megapascals. But when they tested it perpendicularly, trying to pull those layers apart,
where did it drop to?
The mean dropped to 1.27 MPa.
That's a reduction of over 35%, just based on the direction of the load. I mean, traditional safety factors in engineering just don't account for that kind of swing.
And that's just the average. The variability was extreme. The lowest value they recorded for perpendicular strength was a shocking 0.56 MPa.
Wait, 0.56.
So compared to the best parallel ones, you're looking at nearly a 70% reduction in potential strength. It just confirms it, black and white. The intralayer bond is the material's Achilles heel.
What about compressive strength? Pushing down on it. That's what concrete is famous for.
On that front, the anisotropy was much less pronounced. The average values were around 25 megapascals, which is, perfectly acceptable for structural grade concrete.
So compression is mainly about how dense the material is locally.
It seems to be, yes. But, and this is a big but, the variability was still very high, a coefficient of variation around 25%. That level of inconsistency is still a major risk, even if the average strength is good.
Okay, so destructive testing proves the risk, but obviously you can't just smash every column on a construction site to see if it's good.
Of course not.
So how do you check the quality beforehand? We need that diagnostic toolkit you mentioned, non-destructive methods.
We do, and the study looked right into that. They found some really clear correlations with physical properties you can measure pretty easily.
Like density?
Like bulk density. Higher density, up to about 2,250 kilograms per cubic meter, almost always correlated with better flexural strength.
And what about water absorption? That tells you how porous it is.
Exactly. An inverse trend there. The specimens that had visible layer separation, they had a huge jump in porosity. Water absorption went from about 5 or 6% up to nearly 9%.
So more porous means weaker.
And they calculated a strong inverse dependency there, a correlation of negative 0.76. It's a clear flag. If the material is soaking up too much water, it's almost certainly weaker at the interfaces.
But the real star of non-destructive testing for concrete is usually ultrasonics, right? UPV. Can a sound wave find a bad bond?
This study confirmed it absolutely can. UPV showed an excellent correlation with both strength and its elastic modulus.
How did it work?
Well, when they measured the pulse velocity across the print layers, they saw an average speed reduction of about 400 meters per second.
So about a 7% drop.
Yes. That's the sound wave literally slowing down because it's struggling to cross a weak boundary or a tiny gap between the layers.
Like an internal X-ray for the bond quality?
It is. And it confirms that ultrasonic methods are incredibly effective for this. It really opens the door for predictive on-site assessment. You can test the building while it's still standing.
So we have the experimental data. We have the beginnings of a diagnostic toolkit. Where does computer modeling, numerical modeling, fit into all this?
The researchers used a simplified finite element, or FEM, model, but the goal wasn't to perfectly predict the failure of every single column.
Which would be almost impossible given the variability.
Right. The main goal was to see if a simple, linear elastic model could reproduce the global stiffness and deflection they saw in the tests. It's about checking if the basic math still holds up for this new geometry.
And did it?
It did, surprisingly well. The FEM analysis, it matched the initial stiffness, the overall load deflection shape, and the predicted peak loads were right in the ballpark.
How close?
The model predicted between 5.8 and 7.2 kilonewtons, and the experiments recorded between 6.2 and 7.5. So very close.
What's really valuable there, I think, is how the model explained the two different types of failure.
Yes. The visualizations really helped rationalize that unpredictability. For the clean, regular columns, the model showed peak stress right where you'd expect, at the bottom. A classic bending crack.
Okay.
But for the defective columns, the ones with the narrow filaments, the stress was all over the place. Elevated stresses across the wall and even along the upper wall.
Which is perfectly consistent with that sudden brittle delamination failure they saw in the lab.
It is. So it proves that even a pretty simple model, as long as it's calibrated with real experimental data, can give us valuable insight into how the interface stiffness controls the whole structural response.
The response is no longer monolithic, it's directional.
That's the takeaway.
So, wrapping this deep dive up, the main conclusion seems pretty undeniable. If you're building with 3D printed concrete, you need a diagnostic approach that accounts for print direction, for defects, for all this variability.
Relying on our old conventional standards is just a formula for failure.
So the path forward is what?
It has to be a combined approach. We need to integrate these non-destructive methods, UPV, density, water absorption, with experimental validation and, of course, refined numerical modeling. That integrated framework is the only way we can ensure quality control and, the safe adoption of this amazing technology.
So given that this study showed, on average, a 35% reduction in strength just by changing the load direction, here's a provocative thought for you to consider. How will civil engineers need to fundamentally rethink safety factors in structural design to ensure reliability when the very material they're building with is inherently directional and anisotropic instead of uniform? We'll leave you to chew on that one. Thank you for diving deep with us.